Hi, everybody. As you know, I'm Dan Winter, and I'm here with amazing Garrett Markle, and he has stories to tell. Garrett, go
Um,
ahead.
definitely, definitely. Yeah, I've just I've found myself, I guess, from not realizing what I was suffering from for most of my life, with Lyme disease going on in the background, and instead I was trying to like brute force fix all the symptoms, and finding myself being driven insane and in more pain and whatever else endlessly, and it's made it so I've studied just and attempted every angle of diet and every angle of healing in general and stuff. And so I've been uh, really kind of processing that really hard. And it really was only about 3 or 4 years ago, I guess, that no, maybe about three or less, that I really identified like, no, actually, the low levels of Lyme disease that showed up at some point, that doesn't mean I don't have crazy nerve damage from it, and that like it doesn't maybe spike at other times, but that that's there's just a crazy amount of pain essentially, which I guess is from it inflaming your lower spine, which then meant all the sports I was doing, all the stuff I was doing was making it so my legs and my feet were just crumpling in and creating more and more pain in my system. But yeah, I'm an intense guy, so I would just go harder. I would just push further and try and find, but I knew something was up, and I could never really push into elite level athletics, no matter what I was doing. Working out seemed to break me down, and I could just cannibalize the size that I have to compete at a high level. But when it came to disciplined effort to get stronger, my system would just crush. But that's put us in a very unique position, right? There's always silver linings and blessings and all the horrors, right? But the main one seems to be this work that's come together that I've been slowly realizing has to be my main real work because, yeah, because I can see how much everybody needs, whatever. Everybody's so sick, everybody's struggling so much. And I don't think we really have context for how ill we really are and how much more ill we're becoming as time is going on. The system normalizes it the whole
Just
time.
just remembering when you were filming with us at our conference in October,
Hmm.
you seemed very functional. I wasn't aware. I was
Really?
impressed with
Oh,
you.
really? Oh, it's amazing to hear because, man, my system was really overwhelmed then just because of all the, first international travel and then, just everything. And so, yeah, I was having such a hard time keeping it together and stuff. And that's cool. That's cool though. Thank you. Um, but yeah, yeah. I guess specifically that's kind of been part of the tale the whole time is I've been masking. So I'm excellent at just processing my crap in my own space and then trying to present a false face kind of, but I've been over time being better and better at like not presenting a false face, just doing my best, but then being able to really accept where I'm really at and what's going on and stuff. Um but yeah, it really it's so fascinating and spectacular, this world that's been opening up. And as I kind of described to you before, my family are communicators. We're not engineers, we're not mathematicians, we're not like we're pretty rough at all that stuff. And when I first ran into your work, it was like, what is this crazy guy on the internet talking about and whatever, making all these huge claims and all these conclusions and stuff. But I just could tell like, okay, but has he said anything that I know is wrong? And has he contradicted himself at any point or shown ill character that you would lie about, or whatever? And I just had to keep being like, no, no, that's fine. But then I'd just kind of move on to other healing modalities, other stuff, go into raw foods and all this. But I'd remember that crazy guy on the internet saying all these crazy, way too down the rabbit hole things and stuff, and be like, what is he up to? What is that guy like? What is that? And I'd pull you back up, and then over time, it was like I would understand a little more each time, and then over time, it got to where like I was just soaking in your stuff for hours and hours because that's the only way. I can't put it together one step at a time. I have to get the whole message and slowly have it kind of shift things around as I understand and believe it. And it made it so that all these things that I've studied, it then became your physics, your phase conjugation that is then the solution, right? That is then at the core of all the solutions I'm trying to find and everything. And so it's then, even especially in the last few years, increasingly as every day passes, every week passes, I'm able to process and see what's going on from essentially just an electrical perspective, like just from uh yeah, just energies being stored in the body and pains, that's kind of understood, but then really just trying to connect those together to the negative pole, that it's like you've got this overcharged stuff everywhere and you need to ground it. And you can even then do that like with your attention and with where you're focusing and awareness of your body and all that sort of stuff.
And
And
so
the
we have been
mm,
saying for years that the opposite, I mean, if inflammation is one of the primary issues, that the opposite of inflammation is literally centripetal electrical force, literally charge collapse or
mm,
conjugation. And so
amen.
whatever helps the field get centripetal, obviously, will help to organize and reduce inflammation and all that. And then,
Yes,
and the
yes.
concept of grounding is perfect because, in fact, when you touch ground or simply have access to Schumann, that
Mm,
cascade makes the centrifugal force because it
mm,
enables the charge collapse to tune to Planck. And there, the collapse then has the charge has a place to go, enter in
mm,
distribution in the grid. So, as they say, release it into the earth. Well, what they mean literally is imploded into the array, quite literally by successful,
mm,
which tuning to Schumann is. And so these things do fit together. It's beautiful. And there has been, films made about using plasma, their
mm,
5-ray, to work with Lyme's disease.
mm.
It's true.
Yeah, yeah, right. And similar with me still at this point, not having been able to make it out to somebody who has a ray and trying to work on it, like it's kind of lent itself to what's then come out that like I've studied all these different things, but I've never gotten to, for the most part, go too deep into even some of the most important ones and stuff, including specifically breath, that it was like a few years ago. It's like I still haven't addressed the breath or really studied into the, ancient techniques of all the different varieties and stuff. But then I was finding that just through guess and check methods of what was working in my system and stuff, that this specific orientation of the in breath and the out breath was then being this way to cascade through the middle. And
Yes.
so I think it'll be really the wonderful thing about that is like then I've been blind to a lot of the traditions, which would have helped me so much just to know really, some insights into how it should be done or whatever. But instead, it's been this very organic, newish, but I'm just then approximating surely all these different techniques that have surely been taught and understood throughout time, right?
Well,
Um,
and
in
the
ways.
what we call the Mayer wave breath, a 10-second breath, five
Mm,
second in, 5 second out, a 0.1 hertz, which is the most important frequency of
mm,
the blood pressure, the Mayer wave, which is the LF component of HRV. That 10-second breath is
mm,
classical, and it works to help charge collapse because all the other body systems then can phase lock in a perfect golden ratio cascade
mm,
exactly to Schumann and Planck because the zero point 0.1 hertz is bingo for that cascade. So that's classically
mm.
called heart coherence. Start there. It is a simple breath.
Yeah. Yeah, and that in particular, I ran into that maybe once or twice from you bringing it up and mentioning it, and then attempted it, and it was very helpful. But then still, I haven't. You reminding me is very helpful. I should manage to add that to to this. I need to start tuning that in as well. The timing of the breath. Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. And yeah, it's really funny because I was still kind of in normal world and jock world and whatever else. I think it was probably like 8 or 9 years ago. So it was after only being like a few years into having even touched base with your work whatsoever. And then, but pretty quickly, by the time it was making sense or whatever, me trying to understand what I'm doing or explain whatever, that the term anti-fragile hygiene is, came to me of just like that's what I'm trying to do. You're trying to build anti-fragility so that pressure and stress grows you, makes you stronger rather than being fragile, and pressure and stress of whatever magnitude is breaking you down over time. And but that word was so weird. I wanted to, it was then like, okay, well, that's what my work is or whatever, but it's such an ugly word, I couldn't imagine having it be like the name of the Instagram page or, whatever. But so it was just a thing, and I kept like shoving it away and shoving it away, and that still isn't what I would front it with or whatever, but that still has been like, oh, that was like a first little pinpoint that came in, and I haven't heard anybody talk on or use those terms bother to in the same way, but it's not lost on me that specifically you refer to it as astral hygiene, right? Same
Well,
idea,
yes,
same
that's
thing.
nice, which is the idea of, being able to cohere and implode your aura. And I believe
Mm,
it related to what's sometimes called resiliency training, which also
mm.
is related to negentropy,
Excellent.
self-organization. So
Yeah.
all fits together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. Exactly. Exactly. And really to me, it's just my term that I've used to describe trying to approximate whatever these behaviors would be for diet or, again, breath or, any of your habits that then put you in phase with the longest term success. And then even longer than that, even longer, like, which is longitudinal, right? It's
Well,
through the
embed,
center.
ride the long wave, Uncle Joe. The
Mm,
longest wave of memory is the most soul, and that requires the most embedding.
yeah, exactly. And uh-oh, it just maximized in a really weird way. Let me try and
Well,
fix it.
your light quality is flashing a little bit, but it's rather attractive. You're
That's funny.
you're glowing.
There we go. There we go. It was just a special effect. That's all. That's all I was going for. All right, trying to make sure the notes are up to the side, and I'll open the notes. I guess I think I'll stream the little note card. Heptabase is such an amazing note-taking app. It's really, really spectacular, especially when you're as scattered as me, that these newer places where you can just dump your information, you can sort it later and you can connect them with cards and all that. It's really been wonderful.
But there is
Um,
going to be kind of you feel there's a sort of a clear turning point to describe in your way of dealing with this symptoms of Lyme's. Is that right? Or
mm, yeah, yeah, definitely. Basically the problem is I haven't quite gotten to where the pain long term is going down. Instead, I'm like brute force wise reconnecting myself to the places that were disconnected, like the outer extremities and my pinky and my legs and my toes. And I've watched over time slowly through this process, but faster as I get better at it, as like my toes that were like everybody else, that they're all laid over on each other and pressed in and shaped odd and whatever else. That no amount of toe spreaders and even being barefoot, barefoot shoes and stuff for 10, 12 years now and stuff, that wasn't fixing my feet or my toes. They were still cold and they're still like kind of not making much progress from that. And ultimately, through doing this and really channeling the pain and pressure that's been stored down in there, they're finding their form and becoming like very shapely, full. Each one can move individually, and specifically it was like those middle three where they were like practically disabled. They'd have to kind of move together or whatever, but it's just people are disconnected from their feet. It's not that weird, but it's just a little worse in me. And yeah, finding that doing the normal work of toe spreaders and whatever else was not enough for me at all. Like it helped a bunch, but it was not anti-fragile. It was not reversing me the other direction. But this prayer, meditation, breath process has been continually, and I do it every day, and sometimes for hours and hours on end, that it manages to connect me to the pains that are in there and accept them, and then manage to get them connected in the whole form sort of thing. And in those moments, I have flow finally, whereas otherwise my system is so pressured, I just don't really have flow. I'm just kind of, turned off and not charismatic and not interested in the world. I'm in too much pain. I don't want to be fun. I don't want to, I guess is how it's been. And yeah, so basically, anti-fragile hygiene kind of came around first. The idea specifically, it's all from the fact that I've been like tuned to this singularity concept for a good while now. I had a guy hire me up in Boston to do a show on the technological singularity coming, but that was like 12 years ago at this point. So it was early to be reading Ray Kurzweil's stuff and really trying to take seriously whatever the heck is going on right in front of us now, right? And all that. And I did want to ask at this part of just what is your take on the singularity type of thing? What do you think about the rate of technology and its acceleration? Do you think it's going to sweep us at whatever point? When do you?
Well, two parts to my comment. One is
Hmm,
regarding circulation in the toes.
hmm,
When you walk barefoot, what the grounding you're accomplishing is giving the charge a place to be distributed. And
hmm,
that distribution obviously requires fractality, and that
hmm,
fractality requires means circulation with respect to some singularity. In this case, the
hmm,
implosion point, Planck, grounding, whatever you want to
hmm,
call it, Planck fire. And so, what enables distribution, perfected circulation, fractality, is literally, quite literally, a singularity. Now,
hmm,
when they say the planet is approaching a singularity with respect to tech,
hmm,
actually, I have I see that as drama because
hmm,
I see that as most of the kids of planet Earth are rushing into AI in a way that is the opposite of ensoulment. And that is a
right,
singularity. It's death of soul. That's a
right, right.
singularity, and it ain't good.
100%.
Where,
Yeah.
whereas when people realize that what enables you to have a soul, compression of the aura, access to bliss, access to lucid dreaming, is pretty
Hmm,
much the opposite of what is electrically supplied by AI.
hmm.
You know,
Definitely, definitely.
that's a different kind of singularity. They both involve compression, but
Right, right. And I love exactly how you handled that because that's my exact thing. And that's what the talk that I was proposing doing at the event was, is this what was it? What was it called? The journey through the end of time, dueling singularities, hyperbolic space, and uh
oh,
I
nice.
can't remember.
That's good
But
though. That's good. Yes, rich.
cool. Yeah, yeah. And the just not to get sidetracked on it because it would be cool to get to the actual tool. But yeah, just that it's like that technological singularity is pressing in, and the significance of that is that there's two singularities. The pressure that that's creating is essentially
Yeah.
necessitating the soul singularity, that it's like you got to figure your stuff out, become a shareable wave, or like you're talking about, you will be eaten, you will be shredded.
And the fact that it is possible for an AI, we believe an interstellar parasitic AI from
Mm,
Andromeda, black goo, whatever you want to call it, black Saturn cult, it's an
mm,
AI, and you can be absorbed into that array,
mm,
carbon black, and your memory will be immortalized, but there would be no individuation and no soul. That is a compression
mm,
effect. It is a singularity, but it's
mm.
horrible. It's the end of
Yeah,
soul
right,
versus the
right.
kind of implosion compression that distributes you also into an immortal array, which
Mm,
enables ensoulment, is
mm,
biologic bliss process with DNA and pent and not hex. Literally, one,
mm.
it's a cube. It's
Yes,
a blue pill,
yes.
red pill thing.
Oh man, yeah, and this what I've ended up with is a tool for navigating and dealing with the infinitely scaling pressure of that process, right? Because you're going to face all of your inner demons. You're going to face, all of your fears. You're going to through this process, and that'll hit you from every different angle: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. That you're just going to be. We're going to continue to be compressed, and from this level of pressure that's revealing itself through the technology and everything that then it's just increasing the necessity to figure these things out, or you more and more easily get shredded, get, I guess, integrated into this death wave
Join the
pattern
Borg.
instead. Yeah, yeah, oh, exactly, 100%. That's such a spooky analogy.
It is a
um
privilege to be assimilated.
You just about hear that come out of people's mouths at this point.
By my AI, it's a privilege to be assimilated. Oh, you don't
Mm.
need a soul. No.
Right, right. But yeah, so then that is then where anti-fragile hygiene has been necessitated in me, I guess, that then has been kind of distilling down. But
Which
then,
relates to bliss process in a way that I said.
yes, 100%, 100%. And so basically then that created this process called, I'm calling it innervation, I don't know, maybe compression, essentially that is the applying these like three aspects together at once of the like uh the prayer to invoke it, the armor that is then the consciousness points that you're maintaining to have your form together. And then you do that through the breath, through orienting your breath, essentially. And that process seems to end up addressing again the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects to for conjugating the traumas that are in you into shareable waves, into
Yes.
shareable
And
thoughts.
you could say enabling compression collapse, which then enables perfected fractal distribution, sometimes called heaven or whatever.
Right, right. And I wrote here, I've had a few different things hit me of like of a phase conjugate neg entropy device. And I have for Christians, but it's for everybody. And the Christian aspect of it is not actually threatening. Like there's not it doesn't tap into the Jewish version of the Old Testament God. It taps into that same one energy, that same wavelength, that God, but through the lens of Christ, which is very different than how all of the main denominations are, warring with each other and everything else through it, because that's obviously not the Holy Spirit. That's obviously not, the uh, what Christ would be doing in your position, or that. And it makes sense too, if that does make sense, and if that is a path out or whatever, what would have more corrupted fake versions of it all around than like a most refined path out, that there would clearly then be all these corrupted versions to capture you before you actually find the quintessence that you're looking for of what he was actually teaching, and then what could be then communicated over time to then be still a message nowadays or whatever. That it's like that's a whole thing to process and figure out what he was actually saying, what he was actually after. um, and yeah, and there's a specific argument for that we don't have to make right now or immediately. It's a separate kind of talk of like a version that does essentially unify this like metaphysical world with the like metaphysical minded people that understand the metaphysics and how cool the I Ching is, and how amazing all these other spiritual technologies are, spiritual knowledge and spiritual paths are. And uh, the argument then being that just that Christ's prescription, when properly understood, is just the most fine point that you can get to, because it just then comes down to one word. You can just cascade the logic to then the faith in Christ, the faith of Christ is the one thing you have to land on, and that faith in this world is power, because you're no more powerful than when you are most believing you're doing the right thing and you're in alignment, right? So you could have faith in the wrong thing, and then you're very powerful in, just assuming you're right and doing something horrible or whatever else. But so it's a matter of like realizing that faith does cut through this process and this left brain domination that we're under. It's just then about where do you pick where you put that, and how refined can that is that point that you have, that then when the pressure of the singularity of the apocalypse that precedes the singularity, how do you actually make it through center at maximum pressure,
Which
essentially,
is to
right?
say crystallize,
Yes.
as in priest toast.
100%.
And
Mm,
the way it happens on a gold cross, literally. Conjugation.
right,
And,
right.
we did this Dictionary of Jesus Physics. It went viral. It's a
Mm.
beautiful, that the quality of
Oh, I
grace
should
is
look at that.
obviously the fact that living charge will be attracted to what we call pure intention, which is
Mm,
literally to identify with the fact that wherever charge is circulating ideally into life, and we serve that, we
mm,
believe and have faith in that, and we gather that charge inertia, and the mountain will come to you.
mm.
And it is about belief, and it's a beautiful
Right.
physics. Yes, yes.
Yes. Amen. Amen. And then it can be about like that then is manifestation, right? But it's also then not a manifestation that is you're trying to get to where you're manifesting the Holy Spirit. You're manifesting what the highest version of yourself would possibly want, right?
You just need to learn
Uh,
that the Holy Spirit is the opposite of electrosmog, and the Holy Spirit
mm,
is the opposite of steel and aluminum buildings. The Holy Spirit
yes,
is Schumann resonance in nature and sacred space, literally, of
yes.
course. That's what the Holy Spirit. It's very electrical, and there are very
Mm.
specific principles.
Yeah, living phase coherence. It's phase
Absolutely
coherence with the pattern of life.
right.
Right, right. And yeah, it then kind of became and this is just to make some claims about it before then describing it shouldn't take too long. There's not much to it's supposed to be compact, you know. So it's not too long, but yeah, that it's if I'm correct or if, you know, whatever on any of this, the idea is essentially like this then is a or the in a way, it's an aspect, it's the philosopher's stone
It is.
because right,
Yes.
right.
That
Because it
well,
can transmute whatever pressure, like you're saying, to crystallize.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, we've been talking about that physics for 30 years. That
Mm,
the glass meteorite, Cobblestone, had a vaporized platinum, palladium, gold, platinum group metal vapor, and so the sponge geometry of the Cobblestone, which became the Philosopher's Stone, the projective powder, the red
mm,
powder that Dee and Kelly used, literally became a super dielectric, which enabled
mm,
catalyzed charge collapse and literally made the purest gold ever measured by the British Royal Society the most advanced measurements of their day. Dee and Kelly, they made it with philosopher's stone. So that was the red
mm,
projective powder. And we know exactly what that is and how it worked and why it worked. And
mm.
it's
Yeah.
super dielectric in that sense. And by the way, what do you put in the center of a phase conjugate mirror? The same stuff.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. And I guess it's that this would then be a conscious version of that, that it's something to do with your consciousness, where to focus, that
Well, the
it's
super
then the tool
dielectric that
for
makes the phase conjugate mirror work, which is how you use it to see ancestors and gain
mm,
clairvoyance, for example,
right,
is
right.
because where the charge can implode in a super permissive media, the super
Hmm.
dielectric, the Philosopher's Stone, which should be your heart in that sense, but it's
Hmm.
catalyzed charge collapse due to perfected charge distribution, which electrical engineers call a super dielectric. But
Hmm.
that's how you create both telepathy and clairvoyance, because where the charge implodes, it implodes into the coherent longitudinal ray, and embedding in that is called
Hmm.
clairvoyance and talking to ancestors.
Yes, yes, 100%. And yeah, okay, so the ultimate grounding technique, same idea. Um,
Yes.
and a, a mini game you can keep with you for the rest of your life, this little process, and works both in the highest pressure moments and then long form in the whole, because you performing things with proper form then, you know, resonates your structures towards defaulting to the higher form, right? um and yeah, so and then the concept of it's an arc for the technological singularity, right? It's a conceptual tool that is essentially makes an arc for the technological singularity. But okay, so that
Well, I mean, when Tesla used a carbon arc, it was a conjugator. That's what started all his work, zero point
Mm.
energy, and which is basically conjugate charge collapse. And whether you call it
Yeah.
a technological singularity, it in fact is the ultimate singularity. Absolutely.
Mm, mm, definitely. Other than the one inside you that you're looking out from, right?
Well,
Other than the
indeed,
one that you are,
the
right?
perfect arc is the perfect implosion. And when you hold that arc, that spark gap, for example, when Daniel Brinkley died twice
Mm,
in lightning, and then
yeah.
when he woke up, he was a superconductor for everyone's emotions. Well,
Mm,
he actually lived inside a lightning bolt. That's what
mm.
death do lightning, asked Daniel Brinkley. Well,
Wow.
successful
Yeah.
death is exactly what that is.
Definitely. And I got to meet Daniel Brinkley when I was working for UI Media, and it was so fascinating because we brought in all the kind of biggest celebrities in the uh I don't know, alternative news space, the,
Mhm.
Dr. Brian Artis and some of these guys. And Daniel Brinkley was like the king of it. Like he was clearly a bigger, influence than all the rest of them. Everybody kind of bowed to Daniel and was like, okay, wow, he's really something. And such an amazing, I mean, just because of his heart, you can see how open and honest and real. He's an amazing guy, amazing guy.
And the
Uh,
movie Powder also surviving the lightning, he could feel everything, And
mm,
when you survive the lightning, which also is what Kundalini is, you get
mm,
leverage on the lightning.
mm. Right, right. So yeah, it basically it just breaks down into the three things where it's the prayer, invoking the armor pieces, which is done through the breath, this orientation to the breath, and it transfigures your body, face, mind, and soul. Because in particular, the sword of the spirit part is mewing, is related to its tongue posture. And I'm assuming you've heard the movement with mewing and all that with Dr. Mew and stuff.
It's like yantra, I would guess, but go ahead.
Yeah, his father created or started understanding just with orthodontics that like something was horribly wrong and people's teeth are getting worse and worse and their jaws are kind of shrinking and not having room for wisdom teeth and all this. And so he just kept trying to dig on that and figure out what was going on. And then he got into breath type of stuff, but then he figured out tongue posture stuff that if you do this particular tongue posture where your tongue is relaxed up against the roof of your mouth, and that it's supposed to be in the roof of your mouth. And then you can do these kind of exercises and stuff to get to where your tongue is actually pressed against the roof of your mouth. And then it also, you like make a suction with it too, that you're building pressure in the roof of your mouth essentially. And that will actually expand your maxilla even after puberty and stuff. It'll expand your maxilla and will change the shape of your face and give you a jawline and change how all of this is oriented. And I've experienced it very much myself. You go back a couple more years and whatnot from applying the mewing parts, the just tongue posture and stuff, to your system, it does change the shape of your face, like it. And then same with my system, that like my body is a testimony to this process and whatever this is, because of the Lyme disease. Like and you can still see it when I'm in stressed states and whatnot. Like I start instead looking like a ghoul, like just everything gets tight and pulled in, and like I'm wrinkled and I'm holding, it's like uh things trend either that way very fast for me or they trend the other way slowly, I guess. And yeah, through this process, because you're pulling your structure together at like a maximum level, it's pulling just the structure together and not engaging extraneous muscles or tissues and everything. So then it's like you're putting tons of energy through the system, but with perfect form, and then the rest of the softer flesh that's not involved just fills out just from a lack of stress of having to bear burdens that it shouldn't be bearing.
It's like the
um,
rose unpacking. It can circulate.
mm, mm,
It reminds me of the tongue, where the tongue touches the roof of the mouth is the ultimate tantric kundalini switch as well. In
mm.
fact, where the
Okay, yeah.
nectar dripping from the back of the tongue, that's the switch. So
Wow, wow.
it makes
Definitely. And I had like just a thought a bit ago, and I'm so sure of it now because I've experienced it so much, that and again, it was just through experimentation, but then now hundreds and hundreds of hours of it, that like on the breath in, you keep the tongue touching the front just behind the teeth, so there's still contact. And then on the breath out, you're bringing the tongue up and then engaging further and further, and increasing as much of because the out breath is the exertion. It's the and that then it was that it's an electrical connection. It's like it's
Yeah.
getting the bottom of my body to end up communicating with my with the upper part of my body. It lets, and just in a funny way, I was thinking of it as like, you have neuron cells in your stomach and that sort of thing. You've got your heart kind of has um its own brain and that sort of stuff, that you're getting those to speak to your brain. You're actually getting that electrical connection. Whereas otherwise, when you breathe through your mouth and you're just developing a slack jaw and that sort of thing, you're divorcing your brain from your body, essentially.
Yes.
Um,
And the angle of the jawbone was the electrical switch to the crystal skull for a very important reason.
Whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, that's really fascinating.
And that's where the ancestor memory and the speaking, the implosive capacitance because of the jawbone angle and the
Hmm.
tilt of the Sphinx being 32 degrees and the bliss
Yeah.
tilt.
That's so fascinating. That's huge. Yeah, and it makes it the I've thought of it as a nervous system breath before, and I'm only getting to this level where I've managed to do this super effectively a number of times, but increasingly so as time is going on, that when you do this nervous system breath, when you are doing the breathing with your armor pieces on, basically, whatever's going on, whatever pressure you're under some weights at the gym or whatever it is, that the your need to pant and open your mouth and breathe heavy while you're experiencing stress is no longer there. You don't need to fill your lungs with more and more oxygen. Instead, you're because a lot of that process is just discharging ions anyway, right? And instead, it's like you're managing to get rid of those ions through your sternum, through your heart chakra, into your aura, essentially. And that making it so that that when I'm doing that effectively, which is very hard, still at this point, but when I'm doing it effectively, I can literally be pushing myself in the gym and not only managing to nose breathe, but then even getting now barely to where like I don't have to breathe. I'm not I'm not even fighting the urge to breathe heavy and everything. That like it's discharging me somehow rather than me having to, I'm exhausted, that sort of thing. And that when you're in that state at all, when you're breathing in, you can feel your sinuses are cold. You can feel the back of your throat starts getting, dry and cold and that sort of thing. And if you get your system together with this instead, or whatever other, get to flow by whatever means, you're no longer cringing there and holding on to that and collecting more and more cold charge as you breathe in. It then can relax and open, and then instead you get circulation there and you feel warm, and everything feels good, right?
Like a
It's
Tumo breath by a Tibetan yogi. They melt the
mm,
snow. And,
yeah, man.
the perfect relaxation would be implosive. It's actually true. And
Mm,
those who study how to live without food by using the breath, it's a
mm.
similar process of charge accretion.
Yes. Yes, and I've been specifically trying to imagine that too, because I mean I see the people that are even able to be really strong and full on raw food for,
Yeah.
endlessly, just on fruitarians and stuff that are jacked, and you're like, that shouldn't make sense according to any of our science,
Your
so
body
something else
learns
is
how
going
to
on.
eat charge. That's the point. Gradually, your
Yes.
body learns how to consume charge. That is the food.
That's it. That's it. And it's like the diet spectrum seems to be you go all the way down towards like meat and dairy and those sort of things that they offer immediate relief to the system, which our systems are so overblown. I can vouch that our systems are so overblown and whatever else, that even after 7 years or so of raw vegan and stuff, that like I was still bloated, I was still struggling and everything else, and being able to then test the carnivore stuff and whatever else, that reducing the fiber, eliminating the fiber from my system, made it so that my system had less stuff to fight with and argue with, that like then the overstimulation of my system has been able to go down. But I can see where like there's hardly even a way to participate in that that's not horribly immoral nowadays, let alone just killing an animal in the first place. But all of the meat and everything you can get access to nowadays is just worse and worse and worse, and even the eggs and everything else. But those things seem to be a stopgap, and it almost is like the animals being sacrificed for you to be able to hopefully then put your energy then into a long form wave that can eliminate this eventually, right? To reduce your dependence eventually over time, become more and more capable of more and more fiber and everything in a way that your system is actually processing, and then eventually get to where like I went a long time on vegan, raw vegan, vegetarian for a long time. I even built a bunch of muscle and got strong on it and stuff, but I did find my system was overwhelmed still, and I wasn't, so it became something I could leverage, but that it's like, it is like we're all trying to become, ultimately, there's a goal that we're trying to become more and more coherent to where we don't need those interventions, right? And then we can just have blissful, wonderful fruit that my regenerative ag buddy is growing now, and all of this, that's really the future we're after. But
to live on prana, as it were. And it
mm,
doesn't mean that you need to live on no food, but it does mean that you gradually get to a point where the way you consume charge becomes more and more efficient and
mm,
requires less food but more
yeah,
and more charged food, live food, et cetera, et cetera. And
yeah.
the digestion is a blue flame. It's literally
Mm.
the flame that does not consume.
Right, right. And because even the plants, there's a sacrifice, and there's, especially the more you get towards vegetables rather than fruits and stuff, that plant is not even offering that to you. You're eating its body, and it has its own motives, and you're going against its, what it was actually after or whatever. So it's like, yeah, that does continue to cascade where the lighter and stronger, I guess, yeah, that lighter and stronger you become, that you wouldn't even then need to kill the plants. Oh, how horrible, like, well, kind of, somewhere, in one of these dimensions at a high enough vibrating place. Yeah. you know,
You
um,
whisper to the broccoli, when was the last time you knew genetic diversity? And eventually you
hmm.
don't need to eat it, you just tickle it.
Wow. Wow. Oh, that's fascinating. That's really cool. Okay. So, it shouldn't take too long of just hitting the prayer, very short prayer that then invokes armor, and just hit some of the armor pieces, and mention the breath, like what the orientation seems to be, um, sort of thing. That the prayer, again, for any sort of dogmas and traps in our minds, there's, it can be easy to get hung up on whatever it is, but it seems to have refined itself into uh, what I'd what I'd want from anybody in trying to perceive any of this would just be to think of it as an encapsulated, as its own thing, as an encapsulated conceptual tool. And so just take for granted that, the Christian terminology, or whatever it is, that by the end you should be able to see how, just on its own, in its own space, it's most helpful to use these terms, at least for some sort of purposes, and maybe the highest purposes. But regardless, it like fits together in just this unbelievably extraordinary, empowering way. But so the prayer is very simple. It's, Father in heaven, have mercy on our souls. Grant us the strength to be more like you, that we may more truly bear your presence. And the bear your, well, in the righteous name of Yeshua HaMashiach, the Lord is blessed. And, Yeshua just being what he was called then, and HaMashiach just means the Messiah, but that, so there's a couple little pieces there. Each part of it has so much importance and relevance to it. The starting with Father in heaven, you're addressing a masculine God, and all this other stuff, and it's like, well, that is the context that Christ gave us, and it is the remedy of, even though where all the Christians are tend to get it wrong or whatever, is not understanding the character of God. And Christ was trying to clarify the character of God to the Jews, that previously understood him as a vindictive, vengeful god, and that sort of thing. That instead he's a father whose heart is bleeding the every time that you're doing something that's going to harm yourself in the end, that's going to work against you. When we sin, when we do something that we know better or whatever else, it basically makes a debt that you're going to have to come back to, even
Yes.
in one fashion or another.
In Dictionary of Jesus Physics, we define sin as the charge that bleeds due to departing from embedding. You know,
Wow, right, right. And I guess this is giving that, letting, tapping into God's heart bleeding about it makes it so that then your heart can stop bleeding over it. And that doesn't then make it so that then your father's heart is bleeding over the fact that you can't, that you're choosing this other life for this one moment again, and whatever else. And so in as much as that removes responsibility from you, you don't have to endure the issue from that. If you actually understand his character and you're actually picturing it as a patriarch of yours that wants the absolute best, whatever this context, that you don't get away scot-free in your own conscience for having done something wrong. Now you're feeling the pain that you're causing to the whole, to the Holy Spirit, to
to
everybody
the
else's
whole. Very
shared
good.
positive.
Literally to the whole. And, locally we had this, well, Yahweh of the Jews was probably Enlil and he was angry. He was an
Right,
Anunnaki.
right.
But later we think that Jesus, Yahweh, Jesus, Yeshua, being
Mm,
in the lineage of Thoth directly, as was
mm,
taught,
mm,
that when he referred to Father in heaven, probably meant Enki Atun, who
mm,
who was a compassionate one and in fact did care. But even that then is simply metaphor.
mm,
Pater, the puff of pressure which penetrates. It is a
mm,
puff of pressure which penetrates. And when
mm,
the indigenous people called the Great Spirit Wakantanka, for example, uh, that Great Spirit was not, an old man with a beard in heaven. No, it was
mm,
literally a great spirit of charge that was all pervasive, and they were
mm,
quite aware that in deep nature it was present, and in synthetic anything it was not present. They knew.
mm, mm. Right, right. And yeah, I guess just a little last piece of argument for the father aspect or the father orientation of that the metaphysical people seem to have God. They have the one God, and kind of the in the female original version, like we're being birthed out of, like we were birthed out of, right? And so it's this like, it's this everything, it's the yin essentially that they're tapping into, right? And which is a thing, like that is absolutely, you can learning Eckhart Tolle's stuff and just being able to disassociate with your mind and see it from the outside, and and whatever else like the Eastern philosophies tend to teach and stuff, like that's so powerful. That's a powerful tool to have, quite transcendently so. But it's like it allows you to relieve the pressure here, but it doesn't call you upwards. It allows you to just relinquish back down to zero, and then like hopefully that's a good thing, and you're kind of able to rebuild, or whatever, that you're reconstituting back to being human and what your thoughts actually are, or what your wants and needs are, or whatever else, because you had to eschew all of them when you went zen, right? You had to decide I don't matter and nothing matters, and all that sort of thing. But it's like there's the the side of God that is the nine instead, that you're trying to, that you're being called towards. And actually maybe it is more like the one being the masculine aspect, and the I don't know, but that it seems to doing it through the father instead, and honoring both, knowing that both those aspects are real, but then the light itself, the light principle, the actual force of life, the sperm side of things, the shooting out power, the externalization sort of thing, that God can be understood, approximated, continued to be approximated, versus the other one that can be understood, I guess, and that you can just fall back into, and you will fall back into, right? If you just die, you'll connect with the darkness, you'll connect with the yin, you'll connect. But then this one is this version is instead one that calls you upwards to that same point, but it's the nine. So it's then everything is conjugated into then the 10, which is the next one, which is includes then all of our previous experiences and that sort of thing, and which is then longitudinal rather than just participating in this same 1 through 9 and picking a spot and dancing around it, sort of thing. But so Father in heaven, so we're talking about a particular aspect of God, or and decidedly in a way for this, for Christ's lens, you're focusing on the masculine aspect, on the father who's longing for you to return as the prodigal son, right? That sort of thing.
I wonder if the metaphor, they say that eggs are more fractal than seeds, which means
Mm,
that women generally experience Kundalini a bit differently
mm,
than men. For men, they can experience more separateness, which a
mm.
sperm, a seed can do. They can experience
Yeah.
the agony of greater separation, where
Mm,
the egg, the mitochondria, is so fractal. The first woman in Africa, so women have inherently more empathy and less
mm.
separateness, actually. And that makes
Yes.
a different quality of Kundalini. And it does say that it is obviously that implosive reassembly, that tantra of those, which becomes
Mm,
wonderful. But so departure from pure
mm,
fractal embedding is what maleness is, far more
mm.
than femaleness. Femaleness is embedding in the fractal. So women
Right.
naturally are more empathic, actually.
Mm.
And that is something to really grapple with. That
Definitely, definitely.
patriarchal religions, they prevent rain. Welcome to
Right.
Iran.
Right, right, 100%. But I guess it's like being able to picture a man in his absolute fullness, and if you were an ancestor of yourself, of us, from further back and further back and further back, what could you possibly want or have other than like the most wisdom and the most will for continuing to conjugate through love, but in a way that embeds you here, in a way that keeps the game going, whereas like the feminine tends to be a like everything no matter what, or then nothing and emptiness, or it's this like polar, more immediately polar sort of thing, whereas the masculine seems to be the compounding, revolutions on top of itself sort of thing, and that there's an importance to being able to tap into either and both, that you have the one where you can like completely exit space, and then you've got the one where you can see your calling, you can see that there's more of a mission, and there is something that we're all being pulled towards in a way. But anyway, yeah, Father in heaven, have mercy on our souls. uh I guess like each of the sections could be really described and stuff, but I guess the couple more um most interesting parts about it, just the uh grant us the strength to be more like you, that we may more truly bear your presence, which bear being
That's
both,
very good.
right?
Like if you're sitting in a lightning bolt, like Daniel Brinkley or Kundalini,
Mm,
you're burying the presence.
yeah, right,
Presence is
right.
very electric. And in
Uh,
order to bear that presence without becoming toast, you need to be a
mm,
very shareable wave. Hint, pure
yeah,
intention. Bear the
yeah,
presence.
like
Exactly.
absolute wisdom, you're trying to get to. And yeah, so you get both, because also like the brightest light is convicting. It is the fire that you're refined in, like any unshareable feelings or thoughts that you have, they get shaken, they get pulled immediately out. You're naked suddenly, even with things that you didn't know were naked about you, or were shameful about you, or something that you would have wanted to. That it's like, so you're trying to bear the presence of the brightest, most true light, and then also that process being that then you become capable of bearing that presence, and then that's cinched in with after in the righteous name of Yeshua, Hamashiach, the Lord is blessed. And that's one of the most fascinating parts when it hit me and stuff, of your, it's its own little contained thing that you can call on just in the righteous name of Yeshua, the Lord is blessed, or you can shift Jesus in there. It kind of depends on where your mind is and what you could most access in the moment. It's really interesting. But that the Lord is blessed, the Lord is just a title. It was Adonai, and it was used for God and for Christ, but
Or
also it was used.
Elohim, those who can make the L, the phase shift into longitudinal.
Right, right. And it's also a more secular term. And I believe the same people that are calling him Lord and calling God Lord also had lords above them in society or whatever else. You know, if you're a lord of your manor, the goal and idea would be you're being like the most like the father of the prodigal son. You're doing the most for as much as you can, as inclusive as you can. And so it's so cool that when you hit that the Lord is blessed part, and again, like when pressure is scaling, you kind of have to keep yanking yourself back in. And the Lord is blessed part is like when you're completely over pressured, you don't even want to be picturing the Lord is blessed, meaning, I'm full, you know, it's instead is like the Lord is blessed, you know, more of the God have mercy on my soul part. But then when you are more full and coherent, then when you hit it, it's more like, oh, you can be talking about Christ, which is more human and hard to understand in its own way, and there has to be history associated with it. And then there's also like when you are most full, you're trying to be as the Lord, you're trying to be a Lord of your domain. You're so
And you
in Christ, the Lord is
literally
blessed.
you inhabit the electrical domain. I'm reminded as the ice skater pulls in her arms and the spin increases,
Mm.
the
Ah.
Sufi dance student says to the
Mm.
master, "Oh, I survived the spin without getting dizzy. I am blessed." And literally, they inhabited that spin density as
Mm.
literal electrical proof that their thoughts were shareable.
Mm.
They were
Yeah,
blessed.
I love when you mentioned the Sufi dance thing. It's so fascinating that that centripetal mastery is so
Exactly.
cool.
And they use Sufi dance to teach physics now in many
Mm.
universities. And
Mm.
they also use it to teach time travel because when you inhabit the center of the lightning bolt, after you
Yeah.
realize that time is only spin rate.
Right, right, right. But yeah, so that's the prayer, and you're using it to invoke the armor. Maybe we should hit the breath first instead, where it's a breath inversion, I call it, because I always with the when I lose attention and I stop when I lose attention and then I find that I'm running off with a thought when I was like right in the middle of trying to, or I'm doing something and I'm trying to center, I'm trying to get through just the armor pieces and whatever else. And instantiate, it's like the opportunities for having a very insightful thought that can then distract you and pull you off are they scale, you know, kind of as you're getting your form together because your charge is increasing and being coherent. And so in that, when I then start doing that and instead having like a useful thought that can help process and understand something I was hung up on or that someone else is struggling with, or, you know, it's like it'll tempt you with the most tantalizing things possible. But when you do it, it's like you're eating that charge. And I find that then my breath shifts instead to the default of, oh, well, breathing out is the relaxing part, right? You know, and breathing in is trying to do something, trying to, you know, trying to be alive and trying to, you know, so it's like that seems to be the animalistic orientation in a sense, our natural orientation, or what's most obvious, especially from a stress state that we're all just in all the time for the most part. That instead the inversion is that on the out breath, like if you're lifting weights and you're under the weights, you know that you're supposed to fill your lungs up, and then you're, you know, you're pressing out. You're, you know, but that's the out breath. It's supposed to be the execution phase, essentially. That's supposed to be when you're connecting the things, and then on the in breath you're supposed to be just relaxing. And it's the more that you can just consistently on your in breath, you're relaxing more and further and connecting with more things in your system. And then on the out breath you're recruiting only the muscles and aspects of your body and energies that are required to execute that exact movement, sort of thing. And it happens naturally just through pressure and pain or whatever that you're going through when you're just relaxing on the in breath and pressing through on the out breath. Um,
And like
and
if you had a great pain, whether it be a Kundalini lightning bolt or a Lyme pain, but if there's a great pain, and as they say, you breathe into the pain or relax into the pain, Pain is the
Mm.
name for charge that's bleeding due to fractality being broken. And by relaxing into it, you're enabling it to form a fractal centripetal center, meaning
Mm.
enabling it to get centripetal, which is the opposite of pain.
Yes, yes. Oh man, and it really threw me for a loop when you mentioned masculinity being centrifugal and femininity being centripetal, and and it's stuck in my brain so much of that the centripetal is pain tolerance, creates pain tolerance, and
Yeah.
centrifugal creates healing. And I love the idea that those work inversely, that you're only ever really tapping into one, I guess,
It's
you're
like
either
it's like the plus and minus magnet. The one on your tooth makes the toothache better, because it unpacks the pain. But the other
mm,
sharpens the pain, the centripetal side of that magnet, and
huh.
increases the healing rate by sharpening the pain.
Whoa, whoa, that's amazing. I did not know that.
Well
That
known.
makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. And so yeah, then it's just you're just using that you're using the prayer to invoke the armor, and you're then doing the breath through. After the prayer, you just then wade through each piece of the armor and just each aspect that I've associated with the different armor pieces. It just represents an area of the body, right? But the as you walk through it, it's hard to one maintain your focus in the first place, but then to then have each of the aspects and each of the like three or four things maybe for particular ones that you need to be remembering and maintaining at once. It's like a crazy level of attention focus mastery and stuff, and the goal is to be able to get through it, and especially then under pressure, be able to get through it and be with the helmet of salvation being the first one, that your face neutralizes and relaxes, that there shouldn't be any stored pressure in your face. And I knew very well from my system being overwhelmed, and I didn't really understand why it was worse for me, but it's like I'd be writing in literature class or whatever, and like my hand is kind of cringing together, and like so it's hurting and stuff, and my arm is hurting after a short period of writing. And I don't know that it's any different than anybody else, so I'm just pushing through it. I got to get the thing done or whatever. And like you will make a particular type of stress face, whatever you trend towards, sort of thing. But those faces are what then creates the wrinkles and creates the like weird shapes to your face, that like it's easy for me to have like too much cheek going on because I strain up here, sort of thing. And you overbuild these muscles and store pain in particular places. But the more you're consistently, and especially then under pressure when you're out of control technically, and you're making a face like this, that face isn't helping me write, you know and that face isn't helping you like fight. If you're in a fight, it's not helping you when we're invoking it. It's extraneous muscles. It's poorly stored energy. It's a poor form, and is then making it so that you're putting energy into places and cringing it to like hold on and kind of have like a balance on your attention somehow, because you're used to it, and that like you've done that so much. And it's like managing to let that go consistently. It does change the shape of your face yet again, like the mewing, that those two elements seem to be what changes your face, which is really just unbelievably fascinating. But and Pineal gland focus seems to be that it's like the whole thing starts, I guess, and I'm only now figuring out how to relate it to other people at all, but the whole thing would start with like, okay, put your attention in your hands, right? That whole meditative thing, that if you focus on an organ, you then start having a very nuanced, detailed sensations of that area that you had no idea before. You can feel the pulse in your hands if you slow down enough and you wait enough and you give it a few seconds, and it like slowly builds. And then you're like, you could even get to where like you can feel them pulsating almost like it's a problem, like where you put your attention matters so much. And so it would be like, okay, put your attention in your hands. Okay, now you're moving it up to your face and you're detecting any pressures that are in there, and then you're letting it discharge because you're saved already. Helmet of salvation. You accept that the whole story and narrative, and that like faith then can cut you through, and that the faith of Christ, that faith in God, that's salvation, right? And so if you were saved, why would you be stressed right now? Whatever it is you're doing, why would you be struggling? Why would you be? And so, like, just letting that notion neutralize your face completely, no matter what's going on. And again, you picture the guys lifting weights and stuff, and it's always, if they're doing a lot of weight. And I absolutely argue that that's poor form in an ultimate sense, and that is holding them back, and that is, creating pressures that are then making it more difficult for them to keep elevating, because that energy could be worked in and be integrated. But that, like, when you move your attention up to your face too, if you're still then having trouble uh releasing the things there, it's like moving your attention then into your brain, moving it backwards into your head. You can't really feel anything in there essentially. And it's like, I've watched sometimes, is like, I'm kind of struggling and I can feel it. This is stuck and it's not. I'll be like, okay, wait, focus here, and then move that back. What does this feel like? Okay, I can feel some pressure. Okay, what does it feel like back here, in here, or whatever. And it's like, right as you kind of cross that barrier and you're just kind of thinking about your brain in a way, that everything then drops instantly, And so it's like it's its own little grounding area. But the main grounding spot is the anchor. It's the breastplate. The main grounding spot is your heart center. It's
Mhm.
and for me, I'm happy to learn that it should be shifted somewhere or whatever, but I've been through such extreme things through this. The ticket seemed to be, oh yeah, it was so fascinating how it came up. Just that when pressure was so high and I'm able to pay attention to where I'm focusing, and I'd find laying in the sun, getting a bunch of sun, and trying to integrate that energy and stuff, that it would start overwhelming, areas or whatever. And so if I moved my attention to my leg and my system's starting to overwhelm, my leg would start hurting. That it's like wherever you're putting your attention, you're starting to store charge. And I found just at some point of like, what about that center area? And I could see something was kind of wrong. But then I was like, it's weird that your solar plexus, you can't really feel. It's almost like it's numb there in a way, like just right in the middle, just right on that bottom of the sternum kind of thing. It's almost like there's an emptiness there, that when I then move my attention to there, if I'd moved it to any other place, I could start feeling the pains and things that are in that area. When I move it to that solar plexus area, but then just right out in front, that it's basically like it's outside of your body. It's just right, born right here, that would discharge completely, essentially. And so it's like, that then ends up being the anchor. And so on the helmet of salvation is kind of just that first check that neutralizes your energy in some way. And then the breastplate of righteousness is getting to that anchor point, putting your attention into the anchor point. And when it's associated with the in breath. And so on your in breath, you're pushing out, but internally, because you're just going out to all of the furthest areas of your body, that you're you're trying to expand from here. You're trying to open your chest. You're trying to make space for that star in front of you, for that energy center in front of you. So the breastplate ends up being this, like, opening your chest, part of it, sort of thing. And yeah, that it because it's the first in breath one and everything else, that it's like its goal is to be as open as possible and not afraid of any of the pains that you're then finding as you open your form and you are breathing into it, and you're finding that, oh, my shoulder hurts right now and whatever else. And by the time that pain's too much, then you do the out breath. And on the out breath, it's the belt of truth. And the belt is then the perineum pelvic exercise types of stuff, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, that being, very deep in the metaphysics and ancient techniques and all that sort of thing. And I've really found that is a fairly limitless mastery that can keep happening, of becoming in control of that part of your body, being able to uh, bring that up and in. And that it's the when I do it, I think about the the crude way of hitting myself with it is, you're pulling your balls and your bowels in, because it's both, that you're trying to just get those muscles moving and as distinct from other muscles as possible. and and then to take it even further, it's like, okay, but then also the bowels, and so it's like you're pulling up and in, and then you're pulling in from that backside up to that center area. I find between those two, it then makes it so that if I even have just those two established, if those are fully established, the breastplate and the belt, it's like any amount of pressure can be collected on the in breath, open, and set up to be open, uh, and then discharged through that centerpiece, essentially, through the belt, making sure that then your chain, your engagement chain, is fully and I've been able to experience as like when I started, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours earlier, it was like I'm just disabled there. You can't make your gonads move, deliberately or whatever. And now it's gotten to where like when I do the belt properly at all, that like coldness and disconnection from your lower region at all instead becomes this like your testicles start pulling in and you start getting like a glow feeling of just around the area rather than this like disconnected, cold, not integrated, aspect. And yeah, that many, many, many hours later, I'm still finding there's more and more space for me to open up my legs and my hips or be able to use my lower body, especially for me, Lyme disease, it's the lower back, it's the, the lower end of the spine. Yeah, that seems to
You know,
um
I think that that belt metaphor also fits the role of the pelvic tilt as the Kundalini switch. So the angle of the lower pelvis that you bring
mm,
that forward, and then what happens is the lower spine unpacks like a rose, and
mm,
as you say, then allows
yes.
implosion. So it's also related directly to what I think is called the pelvic tilt, which then we
Yeah.
know is the sacrocranial switch and the liquid
Mm,
blossoming, the rising that fits perfectly. The other thing, I
yeah.
just want to say one more thing.
Mm,
When you refer to the helmet of salvation, of course,
mm,
the relaxing of the head muscles, allowing the implosion and the
mm,
conductivity, the relaxing. What that means at one level also is the completion of the embedding into the array. In other words,
mm.
inhabiting the larger array, which Aboriginals would call ancestor memory or the earth grid or Wakantanka, whatever you want to call it. So the ability to inhabit the larger array fully, then you're steering a very large tornado, you're ready to lucid dream, and you're ready to die successfully. It is literally the helmet of salvation, yes, because it means inhabiting the larger array, which is exactly where you go when you dream and when you die.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And yeah, okay, so just the three pieces left of then the shoes of gospel peace. And the shoes of gospel peace is like a continuation. It's the in breath again. And so it's a continuation of the opening sort of part, but instead it's your lower body included as well, and that like your legs are splaying outwards. Like you can even feel as your toes are in or whatever that it's like you're just getting that outer tilt, that fills out your system, that fills out your form. And
And your feet can then grab the earth more.
yes, exactly, exactly. And it produces, like I described before, a fullness of your foot, right? It gets that charge going properly so that then it can just fill properly rather than we've all just damaged our feet so much that standing or doing anything, you're just kind of cringing stuff together,
Yeah, instead of the monkey foot that has leverage.
Yes, exactly. And how profound it is to me, that uh where our feet are all so broken and gnarly and people don't really even have any concept of that whatsoever. Your feet are your lowest part of your body that connects to the earth, that connects you to the gravity. It's your first interface mechanism with gravity, with the true attractor, with
Remember,
it's so
in Finland, they completely invented school education when they let the kids go barefoot. That was the day that education got reinvented in Finland. You know why? Because their connection to ground, that was the
yeah.
beginning of education. Hello.
Yeah,
Proof
they can, right, and they can discharge and
and
cringe
connect
less, do less
and connect with
cringing.
each other and feel the earth and
Mm,
feel each other because they're not walking on these stupid thick sneakers that are
right.
insulating from ground, and they're not walking on electrosmog. They're walking on Schumann.
Mm. Yeah, they're connecting to the long form wave, the long wave.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm, that's amazing. And yeah, so that's the shoes of gospel peace. And it's so amazing with like when I'm doing everything else and you've got most of the pieces at that point and stuff. And so you're scaling pressure pretty big and you're doing fairly well. But then like, man, if you don't then think about the feet or whatever and invoke this, it's like that then can be really struggling and you can feel parts of yourself that aren't filled out. And then I'll remember, okay, my feet are clearly off the shoes of gospel peace, and it's this thank you, Lord, that you have already borne this pain for me. You've already borne this sin for me, right?
Huh.
That like it's the sin of my movement out of form that has caused all of this pain to be stored in my body, whether I can blame
The
Lyme
sin of
disease or
my
not.
failure to embed.
Yes, yes. And like Christ's demonstration was to display how unfair and messed up and broken and painful the world is and say like even if you did the right thing you would only get more pain, and that's so unfair, that's how this world is made, and that's so unfair. I'm here to say like here's the full demonstration of that, and so you don't have to play that game anymore. You don't have to, and that instead you can be on the outside and just thank him that somebody came and suffered more than you. He took on more responsibility than you possibly can, that you're trying to take more and more responsibility, but it comes with pain. And so like you can discharge that pain with, tapping into this Christ direction and stuff because he's already borne that pain for you. God sent him to bear that. So God has borne that pain for you. Christ bore that pain for you. And I can watch as when just that concept hits me or whatever, as I'm in the middle of whatever, that it's like outside of whether or not I think that's right or whatever else, it's like I just watch as my feet suddenly go,
Yeah.
it's,
And if you define pain as the experience of separateness, the only pain you feel is the love or embedding you withhold, per the Andromedans. I can't help it. I just have to tell my Santa Barbara Bio Co-op story. So I was standing in the Bio Co-op
yeah.
in Santa Barbara, and I decided my feet were hot. I took off my shoes, stood barefoot, sweaty on the wooden floor, and I noticed at exactly that second the person in front of me and behind me standing in line decided they needed to initiate a conversation with me right at the second when my barefoot, sweaty feet touched the wood floor. Suddenly, they felt me and I felt them.
Wow, wow. 100%, 100%. And you can also see why then like people don't want that. People don't want to be closer to people. We get so much conflict, we get so much struggle from interfacing and all of that. And you can see why people ultimately over time eschew their own health and beauty and connection and stuff because connection in our current world, as Christ demonstrated, I guess, the connection currently bears pain a lot of
Mhm.
the time and even infinite crazy amounts of pain, right? Um,
Whereas permission to touch defines rainmaking and crystallization and therefore Christos.
yes, yes, and results from shareable thoughts, shareable
Exactly.
behaviors,
Perfect
shareable
embedding.
spirit. Amen. And so the last two pieces, this one's short, the sword of the spirit, ended up being the tongue. It's and it's the tongue posture. And really, there's so much to just the leverage that you get from just assuming what I've been, deciding and testing and experimenting from the inside that doing the tongue posture thing is you electrically conducting and regulating how connected those two areas of your body are, the two poles of your body are. And yeah, so being able to have the tongue touching and but down on the in breath and then having it come up and then be getting pulled in at the same time, creating that pressure under, in your palate and stuff that even just that pressure in your palate is charged then that's right at the center that then the more robust your maxilla becomes more and more robust. Your ability to make a tighter and tighter, suction with your tongue and stuff increases, and it creates this robustness, this really sharp robustness in that area, which is then like power, because I can feel in particular where like when my system's overwhelmed and breaking down, like I'm using less and less of the back of my tongue and stuff. Everything's just inflamed and not really,
Mhm.
but the more you're using things properly, the more they can discharge and assume their full form, assume their proper shape.
And the tongue
And
is literally the sword of the caduceus. And when you use the whole tongue, you get more of the caduceus, as it were.
mm, mm. And yeah, Dr. Mew is carrying on his father's work, which I think his father died a year ago or so, and they've worked with just endless amounts of children and people that needed braces and everything else. And instead, when you just even fix the tongue posture and some breathing and stuff, they're finding, that they are able to get these kids to not have to get braces and get, really, really reorient. So the work that they've done there is just spectacular. It's been so fascinating to
Beautiful. Do you have a reference for that website, Dr. Mew?
yeah, I can link you. He's on YouTube now. He wasn't for a long time, but now he makes really good stuff on
We'll put
YouTube.
it in the notes, but if you just have it handy, just to tell people how to refer
Yeah,
to.
yeah. I would search him on YouTube, and he should be the first thing to come up. Search
What's
Dr. Mew.
his first name or MEW?
Dr. Yes, MEW.
Uh, yeah.
Dr. Mew's
Or you
name.
could
Yeah, I
just
can't
search
remember.
Dr.
Oh,
Mew,
John Mew, apparently.
Dr. John Mew, and tongue posture, probably. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
And that
So
might be his dad's name, possibly, but yeah.
did you finish your list there then?
Last one. Then you have all those things together. You're connecting all these circuits. You're relaxing your face. You're getting in touch with the ground and with gravity. You're opening your chest. You're, all these different aspects. And then it's the shield of faith. And so the shield of faith I picture as like a shield around your body more than like a an extradermal layer that you're building this crystallis, around you, that if you're maintaining all these other pieces and then you're having faith in that, and like just faith, that it amplifies the pressure and stuff. But if you've locked in all of your different form aspects and then you're having your shield of faith, that then like it's the last piece very deliberately, because if I try and rush it and I think to jump to shield of faith at some point, sometimes my form's good enough and it'll like I can catch that wave or something. But a lot of the times if I do shield of faith too early, that suddenly I'm cringing on places like just all at once, it'll be like I'm too sure of myself in some sense. And I mean, I literally mean on like a biological level, where it's like just all of a sudden I'm failing to keep these things together. Like all of a sudden the pieces I had put on are like, oh, wait, oh, hold on. And so like instead it's if you establish each of these pieces, then you kind of make the space to be able to think about the anchor point, to be moving, making sure that you're maintaining all these things and not thinking about them, because you have to put your attention on here, on just the energy, on just this space. And I picture it as like a ball of light, of energy that you're creating. If you can put your attention right there in that 0 point spot that doesn't hurt you and that sort of thing, and you have all these other things going and you're applying pressure to yourself, that then the shield of faith just cinches everything in completely, and it takes everything to the next level, essentially. And like I described, it's like then you may be going fast enough where you start changing position or whatever, and like your feet will start messing up, your feet will start hurting, or something's off, and you have to keep like coming back and tuning each of these pieces as you find different parts hurting. There's then a relevant armor piece that you just remind yourself, that armor piece and whatever couple aspects, you're like, oh, I'm not breathing right. Oh, I'm not engaging my belt, tends to be a really bad one, because it's hard to try and while pressure's high, it's hard to like press. You have to be very confident and be sure where you're at, or you'll shred stuff. You'll hurt things. But yeah, that's the shield of faith.
The shield of
And so,
faith kind of makes me think of needing to actually believe you are
mm,
truly in service to all of life. So if
Mm,
you need
yes,
not only to be in
exactly.
service to all of life, but you need to believe that you're in service to all of life, which is why
Mm,
when they taught how to live without food, one of the things you needed to do is you need to spend a major part of your day doing whatever it is that you believe is your highest level of
mm,
service. And if you're doing what you believe is your highest level of service, you have your shield, And
yes,
that's literally defines your
perfect.
pure intention, and that is
Mm,
unassailable.
yes, yes, that's absolutely it. Yeah, thank you for that. That's the move. And yeah, I call the process innervation, or I've been, I kind of like the term of compression as well. I don't know which one is less weird, or and I've never tried to come up with any of these things. Like that's the important part, is like I'm experientially dealing with these things and then having to invoke them constantly. So then whatever is the most effective term is. So I don't know. Innervation was a word that came to me so long ago, of just like
Yes.
uh bringing feeling back to all these disabled places.
And
um
many psychologists use words like perfecting the collapse process. And what they mean by collapse is precisely this compression implosion, which is
yes.
enabled by feeling it all at once, embedding it in perfect distribution, the heart, as
Mm,
it were.
yes, yes, definitely. And yeah, so yeah, nervous system breath. So that's basically all the armor stuff and how it gets pulled in. And I think it's easier to call it anti-fragile armor rather than armor of God. And it's
Or resilience. It occurs to me, last thought here, that you
mhm.
were raised in a very, very profoundly Christian environment, weren't you? I mean,
No, no,
family? No?
not at all. In fact, the opposite. Yeah, it's
And so how
wild.
is it that you came to that view?
Mm. It was literally only like 3 or so years ago that when I was being raw vegan and doing my biggest juice fasts and stuff, that I found in my struggles and whatever else, and I'm trying to understand God, and I studied God from every other angle, psychedelics and all the metaphysics and everything else, and I still honor, the metaphysics and everything. But I did find that when I ran into an argument for the concept of faith, uh, that specifically just the point that you can't analyze faith from the outside. You can't decide if it makes sense to then decide to have faith. You have to kind of experience it from the inside, and then you can decide if it makes sense, or if it's okay, or if it's, if it worked. And so you're looking for the effect afterwards. And that, like, I just kind of teased myself of just like, okay, sure, I believe in all these old weird books and the Bible stories, and some guy got eaten by a whale and whatever that means. And that was literally, but like, no, I'm of integrity, so yes, I believe these. I don't know what that means, but sure, I believe these old stories or whatever. And then it was like a week later, I decided I'd do it for a week, and I didn't make myself read the Bible. I didn't make myself do anything in particular, and found that just when the concept would come up, I'd have to go, no, I'm on the other side though, that I do believe these things, and I do. And that then was like that next week, it just reoccurred to me right at week mark, and was just like, oh yeah, I can finally, abandon that stupid thought and everything. And was like, I don't know, actually, like, I can't say this week was worse than the last, and it feels like there was something else moving. It feels like there was just, I can't say it cost me more because I put almost nothing into it than what it might have given me. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense, but okay. And so then, like, just barely decide, like, okay, I'll go another week. It's not gonna cost me, fine, I'll go another week. And just finding that process of coming back to it, and then just reviewing and deciding, but not feeling obligated to do anything in particular, that then cascaded into me while checking out at a grocery store, buying my gigantic cart full of fruit and everything. A girl working at the cash register mentioned that, oh hey, you might like this Eden Point place, that they understand fasting and raw foods and stuff. And I've never met anybody in person, for the most part, that that really understands raw food and that sort of thing. So it was like, okay, cool. She didn't even mention that it was a part of their church, this offshoot of the Seventh Day Adventists.
Seventh-day Adventists, they're famous for that. Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And so I had no idea, but then it was the character of the people that like they didn't want anything from me and they understood so much and they were so brilliant and their hearts, you can just see their hearts, of these particular people. It was a break off from,
Uh,
the mainstream denomination. And yeah, that then doing Bible studies with them and just they just became my absolute best friends. That
and
church
then you
eventually
had faith.
exploded, but
Yeah, I'd like to
mm,
just final closing thought here. I have
yeah,
to go too, but closing
yeah,
thought
yeah.
that the difference between a Native American person or indigenous person who spends their entire life in nature and they're
Mm,
always sitting in the stone circle and a circle of trees, and they're always feeling this wind
mm,
of living charge that has
mm,
intent embedded in it. And they all believe in the Great Spirit. They all know for
mm,
sure.
mm,
Now, contrast that with today's young people who are walking in insulated sneakers only in electrosmog in metal buildings and with steel rebar everywhere, and there's zero chance of them touching the Schumann. Now,
mm.
are they going to have faith? No, because
Right,
they cannot feel it.
mm, right, right. Yeah, absolutely.
You got to get
And at
them back
least,
to nature.
yeah, yeah, 100%.
But
And
this
yeah, that's
this has
then
been an
where,
amazing blessing, Garrett. Really, I think
yeah.
your experience is going to be valuable to many
Mm.
people. Really beautiful,
Yeah,
powerful.
I appreciate it. And yeah, I'm just doing my best to manage to navigate the process and slow down enough to figure out how to translate it to other people while then my like pain is escalating at the same time. But I've got cryptolepis now. Do you know the herb cryptolepis?
Ah.
So that supposedly is one that actually is supposed to be really good against Lyme disease that goes in and kills the remnant
I
bacteria that
see.
then seed
Lepus.
everything and all that
So we
stuff.
need great links for the YouTube here. Thank you.
Mm,
This has been
yeah,
super.
yeah,
Well,
definitely will do. But yeah, thanks so much for helping me work through this and everything like I described. I've known that I need to translate it to be able to, and but being able to just know that I was going to be talking to you, like my documents have finally come together in a way that I could even
and you
explain
became a
it.
shareable wave.
Ah, yes. Thank you for your work, for
To
your
be
labor
continued.
here.
So we'll work on the show
Really.
notes here, and so
Yeah.
people can contact you as well.
Cool.
Thank
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, narrow fitness, narrow everything is the idea, but still pulling it together to have a social media that's actually putting stuff out. But that is my like daily work, is getting to where this will, and just be helping people connect the anti-fragile hygiene, just whatever, just be focused on the longest form good and being able to identify how much we don't want to be a part of the rest of the stuff going on. I mean, we kind of are all seeing the veil being pulled back and stuff on how the world really is and everything. And like, yeah, that's
and
kind
your
of,
smile is the clue. To be continued.
praise God. Yeah. Awesome, Dan. Thanks so
Thank you.
much.
Thanks, Garrett.
Yeah.
What a
We'll talk
blessing.
soon.
What a
Mm.
blessing. Talk
God
soon.
bless, brother. See
Thanks.
you.